You gotta be able to just let things go.
I can't wait for Gavin Newsom to go on Bad Friends. I can't. I want to see I'm distancing myself from the Rogan Sphere tour.
That's
First
hilarious.
stop, Bad Friends. Like, you let your platform, your millions of followers, the biggest show on the planet, help them make tons of money, help them really have success, build their own platforms. And now they see like an internet trend about like the manosphere or whatever. And I see guys like trying to create a little separation.
I missed all that. I'm gonna be honest with you, this was like a comedian civil war. Because it was mostly comedians I saw criticizing other comedians and comedians sticking up for other comedians. It didn't really get much traction outside of the comedy world. Bro, it started to,
that's what I
but
tell,
then people realized,
bro,
like, nah, this shit ain't got the heat we thought it did.
That's what I was saying on Flagrant. I'm like, yo, this is nowhere on my timeline.
Comedy's dangerous again. And it is dangerous, but it's only dangerous if you let it be.
Comedy influencers are drowning in their own egos right now after one of their biggest miscalculations exposed their blatant hypocrisy for the world to see. Dave Chappelle, Louis C.K., Bill Burr, and Kevin Hart were among the biggest names to headline the Riyadh Comedy Festival in Saudi Arabia earlier this month, which triggered a massive backlash from comedy fans around the world. But the response to the criticism from some of the comics involved has turned a bad situation into a civil war, as they all try to claw back supporters by throwing mud at each other. Bill Burr has spent the last 2 weeks in damage control, punching down at his fans, reminding them how much he doesn't give a fuck what they think, and proving how willing he is to sing and dance for the highest bidder, even after he spent years clutching his pearls and pandering to his audience over social issues and political injustices. And like I discussed in my previous video covering this whole situation, stand-up clip comedian Andrew Schulz called out all the other comics who dared to challenge his authority and question his integrity by calling them dorks who would rather pander to their audience instead of standing up for the multi-millionaire Saudi propaganda puppets who went to Riyadh. And while he was bragging that his audience hadn't turned against him, his audience was turning against him in real time. Meanwhile, bomb expert Joe Rogan has spent the last week lashing out at Marc Maron on his podcast, blaming him for Theo Von's recent crash out and accusing him of being a jealous, mentally ill loser. But now Andrew Schulz has made an appearance on JRE, doubling down on his own hypocrisy after returning from Saudi Arabia and calling out Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino for not pushing back against Marc Maron when they had him on the Bad Friends podcast recently. Then Joe Rogan went even harder at Marc Maron in an attempt to completely destroy his entire career. And we've seen this before. When Rogan gets nasty, he gets real nasty, mocking cancer victim Flint Dibble for looking weak after the Dibbler wiped the floor with pseudo-archaeologist Graham Hancock on JRE, and who can forget the way Joe abused that primatologist PhD years ago for daring to correct him in her own area of expertise over the phone. And of course, the now infamous Carlos Mencia joke-stealing situation, where Rogan appointed himself the comedy gatekeeper, but then turned a blind eye as a bunch of his buddies went on to steal jokes for years, most recently of which was Brian Callen, who I'm about to expose on Patreon for joke-stealing in his latest comedy special, False Gods. And so now Rogan and Schulz have teamed up to set the record straight, pulling the victim card and attempting to shape the narrative by claiming they're above the gossip and refusing to be dragged into a beef with their fellow comedians, by spending half the podcast gossiping and dragging themselves into a beef with fellow comedians. At this point, Rogan and his buddies are going blue in the face, trying to convince us just how much they don't give a fuck about the haters. But that wasn't the best part though. Andrew Schulz has finally addressed the backlash against him for selling a comedy special to his fans through his website, promising they'd have it for life, but then releasing it on YouTube a few weeks later, except instead of clearing it all up, he ended up just making it worse. So stick around, I'm about to take you through all the latest from the front lines of the war on free speech. Do me a favor though, if you end up enjoying this video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to all my channels, including my Patreon via the link in the description, where you'll find all my uncensored exclusive videos that I can't upload to YouTube. As for Mario and Luigi, once they'd finished blowing smoke in each other's faces while maintaining eye contact, they finally got down to business.
Yeah, you're allowed to have opinions.
Yeah.
This idea that you shouldn't talk about opinions, like, shut the f*** up.
Yeah, this is the whole point. This
Just
is why
shut
we
up.
get to say whatever the want.
Well, it's a
That's why we're the
gatekeeper
best.
thing.
Us and Saudi Arabia. Yeah. It's just us and Saudi Arabia, by the way. We're the best ones, by the way. And Bill made all this big deal about like, oh, they made you sign a list of things you can't say. And it's just like, do you really think the king cares about the clowns coming to the festival? Like,
Well, he would care if it was humiliating.
it's some middle guy who's like, I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to say this. They do that shit anywhere you go. They did that when I was in UAE. I didn't look at it. I'll never look at a list once in my life. I'll perform wherever my fans are. I don't give a Like, that's my take on it. I just happen to have fans over there. There are a lot of guys who like can't perform outside of Brooklyn who are like, I would never go. And it's like, well, no one was asking you.
Right. No one's inviting you.
Yeah. You also don't have to.
Right.
But it might be different if you got like tons of DMs of people going, please come out here. We've been watching your special. We've been doing all these things. You're like, oh, that'd be really awesome to come perform for you guys.
Joe and Andy have turned into the Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian of the comedy world. They're going full Valor Girl on their haters, accusing them of being jealous because they didn't get invited to the party. The only difference is both Rogan and Schulz's careers would be over if they ever leaked a sex tape. Let's be honest, nobody wants to see that shit. By the way, no one's addressing why tall and funny comedian Joe Rogan wasn't invited to the Riyadh Comedy Festival. I mean, I know he doesn't like to travel outside of his Austin bubble, but you know he'd be bragging about getting invited and turning it down if they did ask him. Just saying, he's always included himself in conversations about the best comedians in the world, yet the Saudi government apparently doesn't know he's a stand-up comic. As for Schulz, he's tripling down on the same talking points he's been parroting since he got back from Riyadh.
What was the backlash, though? Tell me what was the backlash?
The backlash is just people who weren't invited and that don't even have fans outside of Brooklyn saying that they wouldn't go. What a sacrifice. You can't perform outside of Greenpoint.
That's the thing. When these comics are like trying to be self-aware when they're shitting on us, they're like, just for the record, we didn't get an invite to the Riyadh.
We know you didn't.
Yeah.
You can't perform outside of Brooklyn.
Exactly. Like,
You do musical theater crowd work.
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, your comedy isn't good. Why would they want you?
Look at that audience of yours. I bet I can count the minorities on one hand.
What a sacrifice.
Schulz's justification for accepting money from a murderous dictatorship in the desert is that you'd do it too if you had the chance. Apparently, the only reason why other comedians are criticizing him is because they're small-timers who can't get out of Brooklyn. Because if they were big-name comedians, of course they'd take the bag and fly over to Saudi. You know, just like tall and funny comedian Shane Gill. Oh, no, wait. Actually, scratch that. That doesn't work. He turned it down even after they doubled the bag. Anyway, don't let the truth ruin a good story, because Schulz was on a roll after that, despite that little hiccup in logic there. After he finished punching down on other comedians, he turned on Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, but he's actually replying to DMs now and snapping back at anyone who questions him for calling out bad friends, because apparently opinions on podcasts are only allowed if they're approved by Joe Rogan. At this point, Schulz may as well just get his knee pads out and smoke on Rogan's cigar.
You gotta be able to just let things go.
I can't wait for Gavin Newsom to go on Bad Friends. I can't. I want to see I'm distancing myself from the Rogan Sphere tour.
That's
First
hilarious.
stop, Bad Friends.
That's hilarious.
I thought that was corny.
Yeah, it is what it is. It doesn't
You're
bother me.
more forgiving.
There's no time that you should, in my mind, no time that you should be spending on these kind of conflicts. It's like pointless. It's wasted energy.
Yeah, but it's fun to talk some shit.
Well, you know, when I decided to talk shit about Maron was after the Theo thing. After Theo kind of went off the rails.
Yeah.
And Theo went off the rails right after Maron put him in his special.
It wasn't even like a creative
No, it's not
angle.
good.
It was just like literally what every tweet would say.
Meanwhile, it was one of the funniest jokes he's ever made because it's an impression of a really funny guy.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to rely on Theo's impression.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like my whole thing with Maron is like, I think that like people outside of comedy have this idea of him, but like everybody inside comedy knows he's a piece of shit and they've known it for years.
Rogan is coping hard over Marc Maron. It's kind of crazy. He's sitting there saying that he doesn't have time for these trivial controversies and high school beefs when he was the one who spun the fake narrative that Marc Maron was calling out Bert Kreischer when he was actually calling out Dave Chappelle. And even after Marc cleared it up and explained what happened with Bobby Lee on Tiger Belly, Rogan didn't apologize or correct the record. He just ignored the truth and carried on as if nothing had happened. But now doubling down and blaming Maron for Theo's crash out is so fucking petty, and he's basing it all off the timing. It's pure speculation. I said this in my last video. Theo came out and explained exactly what happened before he fumbled the live recording of his Netflix special, and he didn't mention Maron once. This is all a projection of Rogan's hatred towards him because he's been calling out Joe for being a hack. And as always, Joe refuses to acknowledge the actual criticism that Marc is leveling at him. I think Marc's becoming a bit of a whiny hack myself, but his main criticism is the same as Cat Williams. Rogan's been pushing 6 never-been-funny comedians on his podcast for years. Nobody wants to listen to stand-up comics detailing their morning routines and kettlebell workouts in between pushing supplements that don't work, and the hypocrisy coming from Schulz and Rogan is wild. They were just beating their chests over free speech and how opinions should be heard, even if you disagree with them, but when it comes to Maron's joke about Theo having Hitler on his podcast, that's a step too far. I mean, fuck me sideways, Hitler's dead, guys. Imagine getting that offended by a hypothetical, and by Schulz's logic, he'd have performed for him too, if he was a fan, right? Meanwhile, when Rogan starts taking shots at Marc for being a pseudo-intellectual with a podcast, he ends up describing himself perfectly. You seriously couldn't make this stuff up.
It's one of these things where, like, inside the game, we all know who the pieces of shit are, and we just go, ugh, we roll our eyes at it.
This is how Marc Maron works. He sees you get successful. He feels bad, so he comes up with a reason why you're bad.
Exactly. And he'll find some like intellectualization of it to justify his bitterness. But you can't even give it any credence. It's like the guy, every criticism he has, he's guilty of. Like, he's like, how dare you have presidents on the pod and have fun with them? And it's like, you had Obama before anybody. You started this.
Well, this is the thing. He like positions himself as this intellectual, but he doesn't say anything interesting.
Yeah, I think
there's nothing that guy ever says where I'm like, wow, that's a unique insight.
That's a
Never. It's childish with a good vocabulary. He's also too obsessed with himself to be reflective enough to understand like why other people don't like him.
Wait, you're saying the guy who talks by himself for 5 minutes before the president comes on? 15 minutes? If there wasn't for Fast Forward, there would be no Maron podcast.
Yeah. The rant is what killed the show, by the way. If he didn't have the rant, he probably wouldn't be like bottom 200.
I think better shows came out, and it's just like, that's just the nature of the game.
There's that too, but it's also like he's not that good at talking to people. He's not nice.
Rogan needs to take a big dose of reality, come back down to earth, and look in the mirror. Those exact criticisms are why JRE is no longer the top podcast in the world. The cognitive dissonance on display from Joe was frustrating at first, but now it's just sad. He either has no idea that he's no longer the #1 podcast, or he's choosing to ignore it and hoping nobody will actually look it up. He obviously still has a wide reach, but he shouldn't be so quick to brag and punch down on people when his own show has struggled to break 1 million views an episode on YouTube this month. And even when you include audio downloads, they're less than half his total listeners. And it's the same with Flagrant. Only 1 episode in the last 3 months has cracked 1 million views on YouTube. So even though JRE and Flagrant are still 2 of the biggest podcasts in the world, pulling in big numbers, they're delusional if they think that they haven't fallen off too. As usual though, things are about to get worse. These guys are so fucking predictable you could set your alarm to them. When the hate gets too strong and you can't handle the heat anymore, there's only one thing left to do. Blame the bots.
In the past, like say in the 90s or something like that, if you supported Andrew Dice Clay or something like that, like you didn't really get any heat. Nobody cared. You could do an interview and you're like, I think Dice is hilarious. You wouldn't like lose sponsors. You wouldn't, nothing would happen.
Yeah.
But now there'll be like an organized campaign to try to take you out.
Oh, yeah, with bots.
Yeah.
Like, people don't even think the bots thing is
well, you
real.
pay for it. You can hire them.
I think a little bit, that's what the comedy festival, the Riyadh thing was a little bit.
Probably.
Because it was so peculiar. It's like they're already so entrenched into like our entertainment, and then all of a sudden we went out. And I think sometimes something gets a little bit of buzz, and then people, send the bots to create a little friction or separation.
And then people hop on board.
Exactly.
They
it's
pile
like,
on.
They have to, because they
That's the
see
thing
there's views
about-
there.
It's not the bots, Andrew. It's your own fucking fans turning against you. That is some elite level of cope. At one point, Rogan suggested it could be the Russian or Chinese bots. Ever since Mike Baker convinced Rogan that Epstein was probably a Chinese or Russian intelligence asset and definitely had nothing to do with American or Israeli intelligence, his go-to coping mechanism is to blame Chinese and Russian bot farms for anything he doesn't like or agree with. And ever since Schulz discovered the dead internet theory a few months ago, he's convinced that any criticism directed his way must be coming from the bots. I mean, surely his own audience would never see through the mask, right? It must be some mistake.
Well, it's just that this is part of like what China does to keep us at each other's throats.
Yeah.
It's literally a strategy.
And people are so stupid that they're going to let a 30-second TikTok dictate their opinions about the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not fact-checking. They're not doing anything about
Yeah.
it. Like, and there are people that, like, consider themselves journalists that will do it.
100%.
Oh, Schulz is, married into the Turner dynasty. Like, my wife's maiden name is Turner. He thinks that my wife's family is like Turner, Ted Turner. Like, this is a guy who his job is journalist. He calls himself a journalist, and he couldn't even do the bare minimum. But like, this is the level of discourse, and then that hits TikTok, and then people start repeating things. Like, there's just so much fake.
Well, the dumb thing is you were already rich when you got married. How much?
The dumb thing is not her family.
You were already rich. Like,
did all right.
It was stupid.
Yeah.
It's stupid. Like, this is why he made it. No, bitch. He was already famous. Shut the up.
It just doesn't make any sense.
You know that Rogan would 100% have fallen for that if he saw it in his feed, and then go on the next Fight Companion and say, "Did you know Schultz's wife is related to Ted Turner?" And then Brendan Schaub will nod his head and say, "Oh, you didn't know that?" and act like it was common knowledge just to impress Papa Rogan. But Joe's even worse than that. Even when his producer, young Jamie, tells him in real time that a video they're watching is fake, Rogan dismisses it and says, "Yeah, but it could be real. I'd believe it if it was." So I don't know why Rogan's laughing about that story. He's the #1 propagator of fake shit he saw on Facebook and Twitter. And so with all the talk about fake narratives, Schulz finally decided to clear up the truth about his self-published comedy special, except his excuse didn't make sense.
And you see these narratives, they take hold, and then they just become reality.
Uh-huh.
And it's one of those things, like, you can't fight the internet.
No.
You know, it's just like people say things, and then they just become reality. It's like fascinating. And like, I've seen it happen with you. And then I think that there's obviously these different levels in comedy. So you don't imagine it happening to yourself, and then you're in it.
Uh-huh.
Once you have an idea of somebody, you can't wait to confirm it.
Right.
And the internet is full of 30-second clips that will confirm whatever you believe.
100%.
And they will be sent right to your phone. Yeah, it's just wild, man. This is wild. Like, there's these people who say that, like, I remember when I bought back the special and then I sold it.
Yes.
And then they're like, and then he put it out on YouTube. It's like, there's literally a video of me going, if you can't afford it, steal it. And if you can't figure out how to steal it, I'll put it up on YouTube. Yeah. It's like, I can't be more clear. Guys, like,
he got your money and then he put it up for free on YouTube
I
and he's
literally-
getting more money.
I'm saying steal it if you can't afford it, and then I'm going to put it up on YouTube in the future. And it's like, what do I do in that situation?
That is the biggest load of shit I've heard all year from Schulz. I covered this in forensic detail when it happened. He sold his special through his website on the basis that anyone who bought it would have the link for life. That was the sales pitch, that you'd be supporting him after a streamer tried to force him to cut out some jokes, so he bought back the special and planned to release it directly to his fans. I never heard him say at the time that he was going to release it for free on YouTube in a few weeks. He even set a time limit on how long you could buy it for, then extended the deadline because, as he explained at the time, he wanted to create FOMO so we could all watch it together, just like a movie premiere, and then he dropped it on YouTube for free. That is an absolute cop-out. He's really clutching at straws at this point. I had dozens of his former fans reach out to me at the time complaining about what he did and how they felt duped by him. Fuck that, I ain't buying a word of what he just said. And so after all the cope from Schulz about the Saudi free speech backlash, after Rogan doubled down on his beef with Marc Maron, blaming him for sending Theo Von into a downward spiral, saying that Marc shouldn't have done the Hitler joke, Rogan went on to explain the true role of a comedian. We've finally made it to the front lines of the war on comedy. With a spear in one hand and a bucket of hypocrisy in the other, Schulz and Rogan are defending our rights from their podcast studios, one dick joke at a time.
The Lakota people had a term called a heyoka, and a heyoka was a special member of society that made fun of everybody. It was an important part of their culture. The idea was if you couldn't mock something, that it was bullshit.
Yeah.
And so he was stress testing all of these different things. So that was it was called a sacred clown. That was their definition of what a heyoka is.
It doesn't work the same in other places that don't have that kind of antagonistic relationship with government.
Right.
There are places that they just do not have it. Like they actually have like a really grateful and appreciative relationship.
Or their government doesn't have any free speech laws, like England.
When people keep talking about free speech, it's like, stop acting like that's the norm. We're the unique ones.
Yes.
In Canada, they don't have free speech. They have freedom of expression or something like that.
Yeah, but it's carved out with like certain things like hate crimes or hate speech.
It's just a uniquely, American thing, which is amazing, and we need to like protect it at all costs.
100%. And we need to protect it and propagate it through the world. And that's why we should get upset when England starts cracking down on free speech, because that's a disease.
I get that logic. Like I get this idea that like things
No,
are
we
trendy.
aren't right now.
No, I mean like even I hear what you're saying. Like and trends do build steam, and then people ask for it and they see other things working. I get that. Like I think that makes sense. Like functionally in the world, you know what I mean? But like my shit is like I care about American free speech. That's what I go for. I'm an American. I want us to be all good. If the other countries want to get on board with it, all right, get on board with it. That'd be great.
The problem is they bring that shit over here.
I'm totally down with calling comedians sacred clowns. That shit's funny as fuck. I can't believe Rogan said all of that with a straight face. Special member of society. Alright, buddy. But here's the thing that Andrew Schulz and Bill Burr don't seem to understand. They think that by doing the Riyadh Comedy Festival, they're helping to open up the Middle East to the Western world. They don't realize it, but the reality is those Arab countries need to diversify away from oil exports, and because they don't produce anything else of value, they're following the Dubai model and branching out into tourism. Schulz even explained it himself. They're buying into all these sports. They're opening a movie studio. Bill Burr listed all the fast food and takeaway brands that have opened up over there. The bit they're forgetting, though, is that when it comes to free speech, most of the jokes they told on stage would be illegal for Saudi citizens to say in public. All these comics were brought in by the royal family to entertain the elites, not the common man. These guys are delusional. If they think Jessica Kirson was stunning and brave for performing in Riyadh, it's still illegal to be gay over there. They don't realize that they were paid to go there, get exclusive treatment by the elites, so that they could return back to the US and spread the false narrative that Saudi is becoming progressive. Like I keep saying, they've become propaganda puppets and they don't even know it. Also, Rogan wasn't even invited. Meanwhile, they're sitting there trying to convince us how much they don't care what we think. You could not make this shit up if you tried. Anyway, remember to check out my Patreon for all the latest on the collapse of comedy, Theo Von's Crash Out, and Brian Callen's Stolen Comedy Special. Otherwise, remember to head over and subscribe to my new channel, More Cringe, so you don't miss out on my uploads throughout the week. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.